Today we're going to make a Valentine's Day inspired headband, and I love this yarn in metallic and black and Impeccable in maroon. What makes this pattern kind of fun is we're going to do a Fair Isle pattern throughout the whole thing that creates this beautiful black and red accent. And it's a really nice effect, and it's a really cute headband with this really pretty twist in the center. Once we start doing the Fair Isle technique, it's really not that hard. Cast on 5 rows of waste yarn. Cut a tail and release this into the center of the machine, and just make sure it wraps around this white pin. Get your main color, which is going to be my black, and do 2 rows of black. I'm going to restart the timer. Now we're going to introduce our maroon or red as our Fair Isle accent. So create a slip knot and place it on top of peg number 1 right there. That is going to count as your first maroon stitch. Take the yarn out of the yarn guide, and you're going to flip this one behind your first peg because this maroon stitch counts as your first stitch. And then you're going to have to hold both strands of yarn in the same hand, and I kind of just put my pointer finger between them, and I'm going to begin cranking. So I've just done a maroon and now I want to do a black, so I'm going to twist my hand like that, and I kind of hold and I use my thumb to create the tension, and I'm going to now, the black strand of yarn gets caught under the pin, and now I'm going to twist it again to get the maroon one caught under the pin, and then I'm going to twist it again to get the black, and again I'm just going to keep twisting back and forth for this entire round. It's a little awkward at first, but as you do it, it does get easier. So we're just twisting back and forth, and just make sure that you don't do the same color twice by accident. And just do this slowly. This is not a quick effort. And now we're up to the white pin, and we want to make sure that it's black because again our first pin was maroon. So we're going to just make sure that that one gets caught. Pick up your ball of maroon and you're going to place it into the center of the machine, and make sure that that maroon wraps around this pin here because that's the pin right before the one where the black is caught, because we only want 1 strand per pin and you don't want to end up with any dropped stitches. So I'm going to just turn the crank a little, make sure that flips under, and I'm going to put the black back into the yarn feeder, and I'm going to do 2 rows of black. Just push things down if it starts getting a little thick in there. So 2 rows of black. Okay, and we're going to stop as we approach our first pin. So our first stitch was maroon, so now we need to make this stitch black. So I'm just going to advance this a little bit just so that that stitch is black, because we want our colorways to be every other stitch. So I'm going to remove my maroon from the middle of the machine, and I'm going to trail this behind like that. And I'm going to take this out of the yarn guide, and I'm going to go back to doing my Fair Isle pattern. So I just did a black, so now I'm going to do a maroon, a black, maroon, black, maroon, black, and so on all the way around. And then I'm going to do the 2 rows of black again. And again, as you go, just make sure that your pattern is correct. So if you see a maroon stitch here, just make sure you have a black one above it. If you have black here, just make sure you have a maroon above it, and so on. Okay, we're approaching our last pin, and we want to make sure that last one is maroon. So get your maroon ball and make sure again that it wraps around that last stitch, and then we're going to advance the machine a little. The black has to wrap around behind it. This sounds really complicated, but when you're actually looking at it and doing it yourself, you'll see it's not that bad. And now we're going to do our 2 rows of black again. So we've done our 2 rows of black. We're going to take our maroon out again. Take this out of the yarn feeder. So we have a black stitch here, so we need to put a maroon. And we're going to go around again, just doing every other stitch. Just make sure you watch as you go around that you're putting a maroon where a black stitch was and black where a maroon stitch was. Put your maroon in the center again, and again that last stitch is the maroon, and so we want this one to be black, and we're going to do our 2 rows of black. So our next stitch is going to be black, and we're going to do this until we have 85 rows total. So I'm on row 40 now, and we just want to check in and see how this looks. So you can see here the effect that the Fair Isle is doing, and once we pull this together, all of this will tighten up really nicely. So I'm continuing with the Fair Isle pattern all the way around. So we're just checking in again, and here you can see a little better the Fair Isle pattern going on throughout. This is my last Fair Isle round, and then I'm going to do the 2 rows of black. So I'm going to cut the maroon and release it into the center of the machine, advance this, yarn feeder, and then do my 2 rows. Okay, and now I'm at my end. I'm going to cut a very long tail because I need this to sew the whole thing together. So release that into the center of the machine as well. And then get your waste yarn again and do 5 rows of waste yarn. Cut the yarn, release this to the center of the machine, and then go around twice to release the entire piece from the machine. And release the piece from the machine. So here is our piece off the machine, and I'm going to stretch it to tighten up the stitches. And there it is, and you can see a really cute Fair Isle pattern interspersed among the sparkly black. So now we're going to close up our ends. So I'm going to find the end where all of these tails began on the first end of the piece. And I'm just going to fold this in half. And starting on the opposite end, I'm going to insert my crochet hook, and I'm just going to do a back and forth to close up the seam. So I'm going to go through the bottom, and then the top, the bottom, and then the top. I've gone all the way to the end, and I'm going to actually tie a knot with both the black and the maroon just to make sure everything is nice and secure. And then do this the same on the opposite side, and then remove the waste yarn. And here is our piece with both ends bound off. On this side, I'm going to just use my crochet hook and weave these two tails into the center. And then you can trim them. And I'm going to do the same with my maroon over here. So now we're going to sew our ends together. So you need a yarn needle. So thread that with the long tail we made. We're going to fold the whole piece in half, like this. And then we're going to sandwich the two halves together. So I'm just going to slide this half inside of this half, like this. Okay, so again, I had my two halves. I fold it in the middle like this and just make sure it's lined up. And then, starting from where my long tail is, I'm going to sew across all 4 layers, just back and forth across the whole thing, and that is going to create the twist for the headband. And some of it might start to try to slip down a bit, so just make sure you have your 4 layers at all times. Okay, now we're going to tie a knot. And then when you flip this right side out, you will see this beautiful twist. Okay, and you can see all the Fair Isle and how shiny it is. And it has a lot of nice stretch, so this is actually going to be quite warm. It covers up a lot of your head. Okay, and then you're just going to weave in this tail at the end and you're done.